Okay, I think we're live. I think. I just want to double check. You are live. Great. Okay.
You are live, yes.
So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here for our second My Ocean Story live. I'm Christine Stortini. I'm a marine biologist in Canada. And this is Claudia of Fundación Coral Call in Colombia. And we are collaborating together to do this bi-weekly sort of mini lecture, online podcast talk about the ocean, what it means to our many participants across the world. And today we are lucky enough to share some time with Franziska Elmer, who is a marine biologist who works out of Turks and Caicos, but also Mexico, on a lot of amazing projects to do with sargassum seaweed and corals and climate change. Welcome, Franziska. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And so you are originally from Switzerland. So that's kind of far from the ocean. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you became interested in the ocean, sort of how you developed that passion, what got you into marine biology to start with.
Yes. So yeah, I grew up in Switzerland, which is far from the ocean, but I did grow up on the lake. So I'm quite used to going in the water a lot and going swimming a lot. And then on family vacations, we would go to the ocean first to Italy and Greece. And then when I got a bit older, we would go to places when they had coral reefs, like Egypt. And you get to see this completely new environment. Like my dad taught me how to snorkel, and then we learned how to dive together. And it's just, wow. Nice. It's amazing. It's like this new place that's out of this world. And that's how I got really into it. And I knew I wanted to do more with that. And yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's kind of similar to me. I grew up on a lake. I guess like you get that connection to water first, right? And the water. And then when you see the ocean for the first time, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a whole other thing. It's this whole other life force. Yeah. So then you decided to become a marine biologist, I guess. And then you went to university for marine biology.
Yeah. So even after high school, I thought marine biology really interested me to study, but I was tossing and turning between actually going abroad to study it or not, and ended up actually studying aquatics in environmental science in Switzerland at the ETH. So not studying anything marine related, but aquatics related, just because it was a bit too early to move away from my family for like the rest of my life. And also it was a lot more, it cost a lot to study abroad compared to study in Switzerland. Yeah. But I did my bachelor thesis in the Caribbean while doing an internship. And during that time, I was deciding whether or not I wanted to do my master's abroad doing marine biology. And in those 6 months, I decided, hey, I love the ocean. I definitely want to do more of this. But I also miss my friends and my sustainability club and everything else I had in Zurich. So I ended up going back to Switzerland for my master's in evolution and ecology, also in environmental science. Okay. But the second year of my master's, I spent in Florida doing my thesis and the internship there. So I always went back to the ocean to do practical stuff, but I never took a single class in marine biology in my life.
Huh.
Which is funny because I spent 3 years teaching undergrad students marine biology classes, but myself, I've never taken a class in it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, the concepts of ecology and biology in terrestrial ecosystems, freshwater ecosystems, are mostly applicable to the ocean. So I think if you know one, you can relate it to the other.
Yes, and I also learned a lot of, ecology that is rivers and lakes from Switzerland, but that is also applicable to oceans. And we learned a lot about, how the oceans interfere with the atmosphere and all those things in my studies as well. So there was definitely useful things in my studies that helped. It just wasn't really, ocean related. I learned all that actually being in the ocean and writing theses about the ocean. And then, and then after my master's, I did a internship as a research and teaching assistant in the Caribbean in Bonaire at a study abroad program. And during that program, I applied for my PhD in New Zealand, where I met Claudia.
Mm-hmm.
She was also studying in New Zealand, and we became part of the same environmental club there, and did work with students and helping kids how to go snorkeling and all that kind of stuff. So we did a lot of free time work together in the ocean and on the environment.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. It sounds amazing. I actually never got to do field work as a part of my schooling. In my undergrad, I got to do some work with, like, some of my courses were related to whale studies. So I got to go out on boats and do whale watching and do projects related to behavioral stuff. And I got to take samples for oceanography and stuff. But then as I got into my work, it became a little bit more like data analysis and policy.
Yeah.
So it's nice that you got to sort of dive in that way. So
yeah, the field work is the best part, to be honest. I mean, I like all the other parts too, but the field work is just, you get to spend all day in the ocean and you're getting paid for it, or you advance your studies with it. It's amazing.
Yeah. So you're still doing a lot of field work. So after your PhD, which was on corals, and was it about corals and climate change, or what was your PhD about?
No, it wasn't climate change, but it was looking at coral recruitment, so the really, really tiny corals, and also looking at calcification, how fast the reef grows and how fast it gets broken down by animals again. And I was extremely lucky because I got to do my PhD in a place called Palmyra Atoll, which is one of the most pristine places in the world. It's very remote. It's about 1,000 miles south of Hawaii, and there's not many islands close to it. And it hasn't really been like inhabited. Like during World War II, they had about 2 years where they had troops there. Otherwise, it's been mostly a private island. So the reefs outside are still very much intact. So we're talking lots of corals, lots of sharks, just thriving ecosystem. So many birds, manta rays, everything there. And you see how the world was before we had lots and lots of humans on it. And
so that's where you did your PhD research.
Yeah, I got to go to this island 4 times to research how because in places like that, and we don't have many left, we can see what kind of connections exist in nature naturally, like how everything in nature is connected, and we are also connected to nature. And how do these connections work? Because as soon as humans are introduced to a system, some of these connections are broken. And so many of the other systems we are studying, we don't see all the connections, and we don't actually know if we want to restore something, what all we have to restore, because some of the stuff was lost before we even study it.
Exactly. There's no baseline that you don't know what you want to go back
to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the places like Palmyra Atoll are extremely important for baseline studies.
Yeah. Understanding how the system functions on its own without the influence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So then was it after your PhD that you moved to Turks and Caicos?
I first moved back to Bonaire, and I was teaching there for a year and a half. I got a lecturing faculty position, and we had study abroad students from the States come for a 3-month program where they learned all about the ocean. They learned how to do diving. They learned scientific diving, and then they got to do their own research project. So we spent a lot of the teaching time in the water, like anything we could teach in the water, we did, and we would quiz them. For example, the fish quiz or the coral quiz, that would be underwater. So they would have to take underwater tests even, which is really, really cool. And unfortunately, that research station closed after I worked there for a year and a half. So then I took some time off to go travel and ended up taking pretty much the same position in the Turks and Caicos Islands, with a similar program, this time with School for Field Studies, and doing the same stuff there until 2019. End of 2019, I quit that job because I started a climate change sabbatical. Taking time off to really make a change for climate change and put more time and more energy into climate solutions, because I was teaching 20-year-olds, how to be coral reef scientists. But in the end, I knew by the time they finished their schooling and could do the jobs I'm doing, how many reefs will we have left? Will they be will they just be studying reefs that are declining? So I thought, if I really wanted to do something for their careers and even mine, because my career won't be over in 10 years either. We needed more people and more time spent on climate solutions. So I decided, well, I can do that, so I should do that.
In 2019.
Yes, end of 2019. So 2020 was my official climate change sabbatical. And now it kind of turned into more of a job and podcast. So I decided to keep working in that region, but also get paid for it with different opportunities that came up.
Okay. So, I definitely want you to tell us what this climate pirate idea is. You mentioned that you went from marine biologist to climate pirate, and I think that has something to do with your sabbatical.
Yes.
But first, I want to ask you the first question that we ask all of our invitees for this lecture series. Like with all of your history and the way that you developed your relationship to the ocean and the way you developed your career, so what does the ocean mean to you?
The ocean, it means so much to me. It's the place I work, but it's also the place I go to have joy, to relax, to be playful, to go explore. And I think it's more of that place to me than a workplace. Like, I'm just lucky that I can spend part of my work days doing all those things while I do field work and while I do teaching. So yeah, for me, it's, you get to the ocean. If you sit on the beach, it relaxes you, it calms you down. If you go and swim, it cools you down, it relaxes you. And then if you get to put your head on the water and put on your snorkeling gear, then I get into exploration mode, and I can just spend hours there and exploring and forgetting about time and forgetting about everything else.
Yeah, and I think like once you really develop that relationship with the ocean and you feel that benefit and you feel that that feeling that you get when you're on the beach, when you're snorkeling or whatever, that's when it becomes more important for you to fight for it and to help to save the ocean, because then you start learning like, oh, that place that I used to snorkel, that place that I used to visit, it's not the same anymore. Like it's the coral reefs are turning white. There's not as many fish there as there used to be. And then you start realizing like, I need to do something about that. And I need to be a part of the solution, right?
Yes. And when I was in the Turks and Caicos Islands, we got a new coral disease, stony coral tissue loss disease, which is devastating reefs all over the Caribbean. And, like you see lots, like you go on a dive or a snorkel and you see a lot of corals which have the disease, and you see them dying within weeks from this. And some of the corals, like, I had that one reef I would go snorkeling with our students to teach them all the corals. And of some species, there's only like one or two there. So I would know exactly where they are, so I could show them to them. I mean, good thing about corals is they don't move, so
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to show them than fish, for example. But then, yeah, if one of those like two of those corals, I knew exactly where they are, and you kind of have a personal relationship with them like that. They got the disease. A very small coral completely died, so then I couldn't show them that coral anymore. And the other one is a big Dendrogyra pillar coral. It's super beautiful. It's really big and it's very fuzzy, and it's definitely one of my favorites. And yeah, it was getting affected, and luckily it kind of stopped on that coral, and at least while I was there, I didn't see it completely die. But when I saw it having the disease, like you just want to cry.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the other dives, when you go diving, you start focusing on seeing the disease, and you see it everywhere, and you cannot really enjoy even the fun dives you're doing because you're like just like focused on that, and you're like, damn, this is really bad. And
Yeah.
yeah, we lost 60% of our coral cover in just a year because of that.
Yeah, I find when you see little things like that, like it's probably worse for you when you're going back to the same place every time and you're seeing it deteriorating. But even me, where I don't get to be in the ocean as often, but when I do and I see these little indicators, these things that are telling me that things are wrong, it's like a ticking time bomb. Because being a marine biologist, you know all the other things, you know everything that's impacting the ocean, all the cumulative impacts. And then so when you see evidence of these little things like in person, it really hits you harder because you know that that's just one of the many things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But all right, well, I think I want to ask you more about your career, and I know that Claudia how are you doing over there with your connection? Yeah. Do you think you are able to talk with us? I think you're muted.
Yes, sorry. It's just that I'm in a different neighborhood and today is crazy. Like everybody wants to yell today, so I have to move and then come back here. It's like just insane. But yeah, so I met Fran in Wellington and I really like what she does. Like she even told me told me no, she invited me to do this Green Team Academy project with a group from the States, which I would like Fran to explain a little bit about it because it's really a chance that everybody has around the world to be able to make their projects a reality. Like if they want to do something and move from inaction to action. So it's a really cool project. And Joan is really awesome and she guides you a lot, and the mentors like Fran is. So Fran, why don't you tell us a bit about that? Like make everybody want to do something like us. So
Yes.
that would be great.
So yeah, last year during my climate change sabbatical, I met Joanne Gregerson from the Green Team Academy. I think she had a Earth Day event, and it was virtual, so I attended. And then afterwards, she said she's going to do this climate action challenge, where teams can sign up and if they have an idea of doing something to start a project, they sign up, and then the program will get them from zero to hero in 90 days. So you're really going to start a project in 90 days. You're only going to spend a few hours every week doing it, but Joanne has a book and a workbook, and as Claudia said, she gives a lot of guidance and one-to-one help as well. And there's a lot of other people like mentors around like me, and maybe this year Claudia as well. I don't know if you signed up to help you around, and it really makes it a lot easier to start projects. Like she has all these really cool ideas. So I was a mentor, and yeah, I shared about it on social media, and that's how Claudia got invited and excited about it, and she signed up. And we had people from all over the world, people from Africa, from Europe, from South America, from I think we had people from Asia as well, lots of people from the States. So it was a really diverse group. We're probably the most diverse group I've ever been part of. So that was really, really cool.
What was your favorite project that came from that?
Oh, I mean, it's so hard. There's been, I don't know, the projects were so different. There was a project which planted like thousands of trees, then other projects phone banked 10,000s of people for the election. Then other people like Claudia started, a whole educational project from scrap.
Yeah.
Me and my team, we started our podcast with this as well. Like we did the challenge with the podcast. There's so many cool stuff. There was composting going on. Somebody started a project to make mats for animals out of secondhand fabrics, and they're now starting a Kickstarter. So a lot of the projects after the 90 days, they keep on going and keep on growing.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think my favorite part was being connected to all these different people and seeing how their projects develop and just seeing all the different projects all around. It was really, really cool.
I wonder can you share with me the name? I can write it on a banner here, and then anyone who's watching might be able to find it later.
Yeah, I'll share with you the link if I find it.
Sure, yeah.
Yes.
Green Team Academy.
Yes.
Okay. ClimateActionChange.net?
Challenge, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to share that on the banner here so that anyone who's watching might, if they are interested, then they can find it really easily. Show that. Yeah.
And which is pretty cool is that they don't have just environmental programs or this kind of thing, but environmental justice or like a lot of different projects, right, Fran? They have, it's not just environmental, but social justice and different kind of projects, which are really cool because not everybody is into environmental stuff, but in social stuff as well. So that could be a very good opportunity to make their projects a reality.
Yeah.
Yes, we had one guy who did conversations between Black and white people in the States. So that's more racial justice and social justice stuff. So yeah, there was a lot of different projects in there as well.
Wow, very cool.
And who knows what's going on this year? Like, who's going to be our new challengers?
I love projects like this because it just proves to you the number of people in the world that want to make a positive impact. There's so many people out there that want to try and want to make it.
And that sometimes they don't have like the knowledge or the organization daily to do it. Like I'm one of those people who have like 1,000 tabs in my brain, like open at the same time. So sometimes it's difficult to concentrate in just one thing. And this project and Joan allows you to, or help you to make a plan, an organized plan to follow those steps so you can achieve your goals, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, to focus. To be able to focus and actually get it done. Yeah, very cool. So, Franziska, you are one of these people that cares a lot, obviously. You've built your career around caring very much about the ocean. So what does that look like in your career? What's this climate pirate role that you're playing? What kind of work are you doing with Sargassum right now? Like, what does your day-to-day look like and how you interact with the ocean and how you work in the world?
Oh, that's a lot of questions. So let me tell you a bit about Climate Pirates first. So
yes, okay.
In 2019, I started caring even more about climate change, and I was kind of sad and angry that our leaders haven't started acting yet, despite all the reports and the 2018 IPCC, and still nothing is happening. And I really liked Greta's new narrative, which isn't just like, oh, why do I need to do something if nobody else does? But it was like, what will you tell yourself and the future generations? What did you do? And it became really clear that this decade we're living in now is going to be probably the most important decade in human history. So we are making history right now. So, you know, where do you want to be in this history? Like, what kind of role do you want to play? Like, if you think back at like World War II, would you have taken in Jews into your home or wouldn't you?
Right.
And this is the same thing. Like, what do you do now? This is really important time of history. And I stumbled over this book called Be More Pirate, which is about if a system is broken, you should rewrite some rules, like break some rules and make new rules to make a new system on the side. And if people like it, then it will thrive and become bigger. And that's where the climate pirate came from. And in the book, they asked different questions. And one was, what are you willing to fight for? And what fighting for means, you know, putting your job at risk, putting relationships at risk, putting your reputation at risk, like, you know, like really standing up for these things. And for me, that was the climate and biodiversity crisis, because I knew if we don't fix those, then all the other things are going to be meaningless anyways, and are going to lose them earlier or later as well. And that, like, just that realization and writing that down for myself made me aware that I can speak up a lot more about climate change and about the issues we have today without being scared about what people think about me, because in the end, what they think isn't that important as us actually taking action. And that's when Climate Pirates was born. And first thing I did was changing the lecture I had about climate change, which was a lot of graphs, quite boring, just showing how different animals cannot make skeletons and so on. And I taught them about, okay, 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees, what's the difference? What's the difference for coral reefs, for the ocean? And then I showed them the clock of how long it's actually going to take us to get to 1.5 degrees. And it's not a long time. And it was a clock ticking down. And I told them, like, okay, you want to have a job in this? Like, this is the time we have. Like, is this enough time for you to start a career? And that really got the students going. And we started this Climate Pirate Club together, which was kind of like just an environmental club for the students who are there. Now it became a newsletter because our students had to go virtual after COVID hit. But soon it will be an in-person climate club again. And for me, it's just a label of how I see myself as somebody who speaks up about climate change and is breaking rules and reimagining and using creativity to think about a new normal, a new future. Like, how can we make things better and still enjoyable for us?
Yeah, that's so key. I think that, and that's something that Claudia and I have talked about a lot, because we're hoping to create some educational materials for kids. It's like, how do you approach these subjects in a way that is understandable and engaging and like makes sense and is actionable? Like, how can you express these problems to the younger generation in a way that they are like, I can do something about it and I want to do something about it because this is my future. Like, that's the narrative that you're talking about, that I think all of us are starting to realize that we need to take that narrative if we want to create change, right?
Yeah, and we have to stop thinking about what is possible with the system we have today. And we have to think about, okay, what is needed? And is it actually possible to do that? Is it possible to change the system? Like, there's so much stuff that is possible, but it just doesn't fit in our society or our political system.
Yeah.
But it is totally possible. Just because those systems are so narrow, we have to open up those systems and make space for these new things. Like, I mean, the IPCC asked for a transition. unpreceded, rapid transition. So we have to change everything about our lives. And doesn't mean it's going to get worse. It's just we have to start imagining a better future where community and nature is in the heart of what we do every day.
Exactly.
And we're not that focused on consuming and destroying nature and even home with it, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, that's the colonial, the way that the colonial system has taken over the planet, and like indigenous cultures were the keepers of the planet. They are the people who are housing that knowledge and have that way of living and have that way of thinking about the earth. And it's like the colonial system has just taken society away from that. And it's like, no, we need to get back to that, or else we're going to destroy our planet and we're going to destroy ourselves. And then we need like people from all walks of life. We need people from all different types of careers, all different ways of thinking to start changing the system from the inside. Like we need economists to start thinking about environmental economics. We need business people to start thinking, how am I going to run my business in a way that's also like honoring the earth and not destroying it? Like we need everybody to start thinking in a different way, right?
Yes, everybody can start where they are right now. Like think about your job and the company you're working for. Like, what do they do for the environment? Like what kind of lobby groups are they part of? Who do they lobby for? Where does the pension fund put your money in? Like these are two things that are extremely important, that have so much power, that even as a small group of employees, people have changed that. Like if a small group of employees starts talking about this and demands that this is looked at and changed, you will likely get change in the company. So yeah, anybody can do something.
I think that,
Choice.
and I think that many people think that they have to do like big stuff and big changes to be able to do something. Like they don't take into account that with the small things they can make a big impact. So that's really important. Like no effort is too little. So I guess Fran could give us some tips about that later.
Yeah, that's
sure.
true. But yeah, so I guess before we move on to like tips and like what your message is, could you talk a little bit about the work that you do with sargassum?
Yes, so sargassum is a genus of algae, and there's like 350 different algae species in it. But the ones I'm focusing on are just two species that are very special. They're the only algae that is never attached to the ground. So they are always free floating on the top of the ocean. They have these little bladders that are full of air that make them float on the ocean. And it's this beautiful golden color mats that harbor all these animals. Unfortunately, due to climate change and due to us putting in a lot of nutrients through rivers like the Amazon and the Congo, but also on the coasts into the ocean, these algae, first of all, moved from their normal home, the Sargasso Sea, down to the tropical Atlantic. And there, with all the nutrients and the warm water and the lot of light, they are growing like crazy, which is fine if they stay in the ocean, but then they get moved to the coasts, both to Africa and to the Caribbean and Mexico and Florida, all these areas. And then you have lots of algae beaching on the beach. So they're landing on the beach. Sometimes it's knee high, hip high, and it's just coming and coming, and the algae die, and then they decompose and they release gases which are not really nice smelling, and they're toxic. And also the water itself becomes without oxygen, so all the animals close to shore, they have to move or they die because of this algae decomposing. And then a lot of money and manpower is needed to remove it once it gets to there. And of course, no tourist wants to be on a white sandy beach full of smelly algae where you can't go swimming, where the water is brown like chocolate. Nobody wants to do that. So people, the islands are losing a lot of tourist income, which is their biggest economy, and same in Mexico. Like if you lose, Mexico lost 30% of the tourist income, so that is huge if that's your main income as a region. And we're losing seagrass beds, we're losing all kinds of stuff due to it. However, I mean, in the end, it's still this amazing algae that is growing, and you can make so many products out of algae. So there is a lot of different people who have come up with products you can make out of it. So when it is collected, hopefully even before it reaches the beach, you then can make products out of it and start a whole new blue economy, which could help these islands. So it is not just a catastrophe, but also an opportunity. And myself, I'm working on 2 different projects. One is a podcast called the Sargassum Podcast, and you can find it on YouTube and also on Spotify and Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts, really. And we talk every week with a stakeholder that works with sargassum or studies it or is impacted by it, and hear from them their solutions and their thoughts and their knowledge. And it's in English, sometimes in French, and sometimes in Spanish, because people from those regions talk in different languages. And with it, we want to inspire others to also come up with solutions by hearing about how somebody else came up with a solution, or by hearing specific knowledge they may need to start a solution. And the other project I'm part of is more research-based, and we are researching how we could use the sargassum as a carbon capture. So how we can use the carbon in the sargassum, because 1/10 of it is actually carbon. So the sargassum takes up a lot of CO2 from the air and the ocean. And at the moment when it gets to the beach, that is released back. So it is a net zero carbon. But if we use that carbon and we would sink it to the deep sea, or put it in other storage, or put it in long-term products, then we could actually draw down carbon and help climate change. And since sargassum can grow anywhere in the ocean, and the ocean is 70% of our planet, this could be scaled up to gigatons per year. Like, this could be a huge solution for climate change.
Very cool. And you were saying you're thinking about placing these sargassum carbon sinks in some gyres, like where they would be sort of contained by natural current in the ocean. Where exactly are you looking at for these, or are you allowed to say?
I think I'm allowed to say. I mean, we're trying to stay in the Atlantic because we don't really want to introduce the sargassum to other oceans. And so one of the gyres is already taken up by sargassum, which is the Sargasso Sea. So that's a natural place it lives in, and it kind of shows that, yes, having these currents all go in is helping to contain it. So we are thinking of moving to the southern Atlantic and using the gyres down there.
Cool. Very cool. So I guess coming back to day-to-day life. So you run your life, you want to be by the ocean, you live by the ocean. That's also part of your career, but it's also part of like how you live your life and where you find your joy and where you find your peace. So I'm wondering if you can share some advice to anybody who's watching this about how they can improve their connection to the ocean, feel like they're doing something, feel like they're making a positive impact, regardless of where they live, but how they can bring that into their day-to-day life.
Yeah, so if you live close to the ocean, you should definitely make sure you make time for the ocean. Like me, for example, living in Playa del Carmen, At the moment, I don't have any field work, so I don't have to go to the ocean professionally. But every day at 4 or 5 o'clock when I'm done with work, I spend an hour at the ocean, go swimming and enjoy it, and make sure I take advantage of being there. If you live far away from the ocean, it's harder to go and enjoy it. I mean, you could do on vacations, but also there's really good programs to watch movies about the ocean, documentaries, where you can immerse yourself into that beautiful world. And our world is very connected, and anything you do on land will eventually end up in the ocean, whether it is plastic trash or the carbon dioxide you put out. 25% of that is not in the atmosphere, but is going into the ocean and taken up for us.
Sorry, I think you cut out for a second there. Could you repeat what you just said?
Yes, so 20% of the CO2 that goes into the atmosphere by anybody in the world, no matter how far away from the ocean you are, goes back into the ocean. So, and also like agriculture, fertilizers, so on, a lot of that ends up in the ocean. Anything that goes down your toilet will end up somewhere in the ocean. So you have to really think about what you're doing, and that we are not using the ocean as a dump.
Yeah.
And then also think about how are you consuming ocean products, like what kind of fish do you eat? Are you eating fish that has a lot of bycatch, a lot of trawling? Because we are using the ocean nowadays as a place to extract and a place to dump.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in our minds, the ocean is this beautiful place that we need for peace and quiet and for exploration and for vacations. So we cannot do both of these things, like get products and live a lifestyle that out of our eyes we are extracting and dumping, not us ourselves, but back in the line. It is happening. And at the same time think of the ocean as this beautiful place we want to preserve. So it's really difficult to make sure that you're not part of that system anymore.
Yeah, I think it's like having a little bit of a mind shift, right? To have that kind of in the back of your mind of, oh, my actions actually impact the world around me. My actions actually impact every single thing that I do, every product that I buy, every way that I live my life, every time I drive my car, everything that I do has an impact. And so if you can keep that in the back of your mind, then you're maybe less likely to do harmful things, or to at least try to limit the harmful things that you do.
Yes.
I think in fact, I think what Fran is saying is really something that we can think about. And when we start doing things and they become like a habit, when you don't do them, you feel bad. It's like, now I feel bad because I did this that I know that I shouldn't be doing. So that's something that we now sometimes are not conscious about what we do, but when you think about it, you can do changes because you are knowing what you're doing. So that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes. And I think it's not, we're never going to be perfect. So I think it's important to change habits and try to stick with them. But if there's a reason, sometimes you just cannot stick with them, and then it's also okay not to feel guilty, because feeling guilty isn't really helping. But maybe just think about, okay, next time, is there a way that maybe I can bring a container? Or, if you feel guilty about having to have a plastic thing for takeout, like, it's better to think about, okay, how can I change this? Is this situation something I can change, or is it completely out of my control?
Yeah,
rather than just feel guilty. And then, because when you feel guilty, you're not really changing your behavior, you just have this guilt feeling, and it doesn't work to change behavior really well.
Yeah, and that's also just not good for your own mental health and your own happiness to feel guilt. Guilt is a horrible emotion. but also like you said, there are certain things that you can't change. So like it needs to be a combination of the higher up, the things that we can't control. So like the governments, the corporations, they need to change so that it's easier for us to make those proper choices. There's certain choices that we can't make. There's certain things that are kind of forced on us. We can try our best, and obviously each one of us should try our best. But yeah, like to not feel so guilty when you slip up or there's something that's out of your control.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and like as you said, we live in a system where it's really hard to live sustainably and to live without harming the planet and harming the ocean. So instead of spending lots and lots of time trying to be a perfect, zero waste person or perfect anything, spend some time, calling out our governments, calling out the corporations, and asking for system change.
Mm-hmm.
Because without that, it's not going to happen. It's not a few environmentalists going zero waste that are going to solve this problem. We need to change the system.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like, I mean, I think that more and more people are starting to get these messages and starting to feel that connection to the earth and starting to know that we need a change, because the more people that are putting the pressure on, the more people who are actually voting and putting pressure on corporations, the more people that are doing that, the more likely there is going to be change, because it can't just be a small portion of the population. Like we all need to band together. That's why I think it's so important to like have someone like you come and speak and share this message and talk with us and like get the word out there and engage people, hopefully.
And
so I'm wondering,
it actually doesn't take that many people. So a study published showing that if 3.5% of the population engages in peaceful protests for something, there's pretty much every time in history there was changes in the system made. So we don't need 50%. We only need 3.5%. But it is still really important to get that 3.5% that everybody's showing up. Like, so next time you hear about a climate protest or Black Lives Matters or anything else, like if you care about that issue, show up. It's fun too, to go to these things too. So, but it's important that everybody shows up.
Mm-hmm. And you gain a sense of community when you go to those types of events, right? Because you're surrounded by like-minded people who are passionate and want to make a positive change. So then that sort of like helps you to feel more like empowered, like, yes, we're going to make a change. And like, there's a lot of people around here like me that feel the same way. And
yes.
Yeah. So I guess with that, we are actually reaching the end of our My Ocean story. I'm wondering if we've covered a lot of topics and a lot of this kind of comes into this final question, but do you have a message like from the ocean, about the ocean, that you want to share with the world?
Yes. So as I said, the ocean is not doing well. We have been extracting and polluting for way too long, and we have to stop. And this is the decade where we have to really make changes. So make sure that you find your character for this historic time. I'm a climate pirate. You can be too, or choose any other character, but make sure you're on the right side of history and you're fighting for the right things.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Franziska. Thank you so much for joining us today for our second My Ocean story. Like, you were an amazing second, like super inspirational second speaker. Thank you so much. And,
we can talk. We can
we'll
talk with Fran for ages.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to end the broadcast now. Thank you all for joining us for our second My Ocean story. We hope to see you again in a couple of weeks for our third speaker. And we will be posting on our social media. So stay tuned on Ocean Minded Education or Fundación Coral Call. We will be sharing our third speaker with you very soon. And the link will always be in our bio. So stay tuned, and we hope that you join us next time. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.